All right. So for Torah study today, this week's portion is VaYeishev, and we're on 226 in the Eitz Chaim, or the start of chapter 37 in the book of Genesis, whatever Chumash you're using. Just look in the table of contents to VaYeishev or Genesis 37. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So I wanted to look at the beginning of the portion. I don't think we've looked at that in a couple years. I think last year we looked at the Tamar Judah story. So I want to look at the beginning, and it's kind of related to what Jules asked before I hit record, mainly about Jacob playing favorites when getting, as we read in last week's portion, as he got ready to reunite with his brother, he divided up the camp, and it looked like, from the way the Torah was describing it, that he put his Rachel and Rachel's children in the rear to protect them the most, since those in front would meet Esau first. So as I said to Jules, we're going to look into that favoritism as it comes to play in this portion. So again, we're on 226 in the Eitz Chaim, start of chapter 37. VaYeishev Yaakov be'eretz megurei aviv be'eretz Canaan. Jacob settled, dwelled in the land of his father's, that's plural, his father's dwelling or living, megurei. So lagur is to live. That's in modern Hebrew. Eifo atah gar, where do you live? And you'd answer the question, live in Olney. Okay, so lagur is to live. Megurei is just another construct of that three-letter root, meaning to live. So the living places. So Jacob dwelled, settled in the land of the living place of his fathers, in the land of Canaan. So it's just unusual wording here, VaYeishev, that he was settled. If we take a look down below the line, there's interesting comment just about that idea of being settled. And so Jacob was settled. Below the line there in the bottom left, Jacob was settled. Jacob thought he was going to settle down after all he had been through, but events would not permit him to. Okay, so all that he's been through, right? He had to run away from home, ended up in Padan Aram, where his cousins were, works for Laban for 20 some odd years, marries Leah and Rachel, has 13 children that are named, right? The 12 boys and Dinah, the girl, and makes his way back. Rachel dies in childbirth to Joseph, reunites with, before that, reunites with Esau, and then has this terrible incident, war with Shechem, right? When the son of the king of Shechem rapes Dinah, and then how Shimon and Levi enact revenge against them. So all of that has happened, and now it says VaYeishev Yaakov. So Jacob was settled. So that's the comment here. Jacob thought he was going to settle down after all he had been through, but events would not permit him to. We often think, so just when he thought, so in other words, Rashi is saying, just as he thought that he could settle down now, that things would be quiet, we know from the rest of the story that things are going to pick up again and get quite because we've read this story before. We know about Joseph being sold into slavery, Jacob suffering over that, and then the famine in the land, etc., etc. We often think that once we reach a certain milestone, we'll be able to settle down to a life free of challenges, right? So that's what retirement is all about. That's what we hope for in retirement. And then health gets in the way, family gets in the way, whatever, what things get in the way, so that maybe our retirement is not as tranquil as we would want. But life never promised to be tranquil. The sages see this settling as an effort to disengage from the problems of living. So, in other words, according to this commentary, other rabbis see this idea of settling as trying to escape from some responsibilities that he would normally have. Zornberg, so this is a modern scholar, Aviva Zornberg, who I've heard teach. She's really remarkable. She has a PhD in English literature, and made Aliyah a number of years ago from Scotland, and has come up with incredibly deep psychological insights into the Torah. And she has a volume on each of the books of the Torah. And so that's who the Zornberg is. Zornberg comments, the full tension of composure and discomposure, of order and disorder in the world is felt most acutely by the righteous, by those whose sense of beauty and desire for order exposes them to the shock of reality. Esau, by contrast, settles in a land of Seir without incident. Okay, so just adding that extra layer there about composure and discomposure. Okay, so just this idea, what comes to mind to the commentators over the centuries, just from this innocuous use of the word VaYeishev. Okay, and so that's how this. Also, chapter 37 here actually begins a story unto itself. This, from 37 until the end of Genesis, could be a unit that could stand independently of everything else that came before in the book of Genesis. So if the story began here, once upon a time, Jacob had been settled in the land of Canaan. Okay, so that would be the way the story would begin. Jacob was settled, dwelling in the land of Canaan, the land of his ancestors. Okay, verse 2, Eile Toldot Yaakov. This is the story, this is the line of Jacob. And of course, as we've seen in other uses of this phrase before with Abraham and Isaac, the Torah picks the favored child. So, right, Eile Toldot Yitzchak ben Avraham, right, and so this is the line of Isaac. So you have the favored child, Isaac over Ishmael, Jacob over Esau, etc. So here, Yosef ben Sheva Esrei Shana haya ro'eh et echav batzon, vehu na'ar et bnei Vilha ve'et bnei Zilpa neshei aviv, vayaveh Yosef et dibatam ra'a el avihem. So this is our introduction to Joseph. This is the line of Jacob. Joseph was 17 years old. He was shepherding et echav. So et sometimes means with. He was shepherding with his brothers, with the flocks, and he was Na'ar. He was the youngest of, right? Or he was a helper to the sons. Okay, so the English translation translates Na'ar as helper. which I guess could be the case. Na'ar, we've seen the word na'ar before in the Torah. Um, there's a Na'ar who who came to tell Abraham about Lot being taken captive. There's a Na'ar. Isaac is referred to as a Na'ar when Abraham takes Isaac up to the mountain. So Na'ar could be an age description, like teenager, because we're just told he's 17 years old. So it could mean teenager, or it could mean helper. It could be translated, he's the youngest of the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, or he's a helper to them, which could make sense in this context as doing the shepherding work, that he was assigned to those four, right? There are two of Bilhah and two of Zilpah, right? Asher, Naphtali, Zebulun, Issachar. I think those are the four. You can look back. And then it says, now interestingly, he's described as doing this shepherding work. And then it says Joseph would bring a bad report about them to his father. So he's assigned to these four. So if we understand Na'ar as the helper, he's assigned to them. And what he would do is report back badly about them to Jacob. Now, so already the story is starting by adding this intrigue of Joseph and his brothers and his stepbrothers, okay? Because his only true brother of both his father and his mother is Benjamin. All the other brothers are stepbrothers. They are, or half-brothers. They are half-brothers, I guess is the technical term. Right? So Bilhah, Zilpah, and Leah's children are all half-siblings of Joseph. So if they're all raised in the same house, are they all considered equal? Or does the fact that who their mother is determine the relationship that they have with Jacob? So we know that Rachel was the loved one, the preferred one, so that Rachel's child would psychologically naturally be the preferred one, right? So that's therefore, but just because he's preferred to this point, we don't know anything yet. We're about to read about his preferred status. Doesn't mean necessarily that there's going to be bad blood between everybody. Everybody could get along. Everybody could have a good time knowing that they're all Jacob's children and they're being raised in a prominent and prosperous family. But why? But we're not told why Joseph is bringing a bad report to his father. You know, it's something that little kids do. Mommy, Daddy, look what brother so-and-so did or sister so-and-so did, right? Children always go back and forth like that to mom and dad to kind of like get at their brother and sister. So it happens all the time. But when you're 17, is it supposed to still happen? So you would think as a 17-year-old that some of those childhood immature antics wouldn't happen anymore. So, but yeah, go ahead, Saul.
Okay, Joseph went out to help the sons of his concubines. Yep. Were they assigned lower level jobs because the concubines as opposed to Leah's children?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. We don't know. That there are a number of questions that the Torah is cryptic about, so that we don't have an answer to those questions. So above the line, In that commentary for Bilhah and Zilpah, okay, so even before that, as a helper to the sons of. So on the right hand side, right below the Hebrew, he was an assistant to Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. So I had a couple of the names right of the four of those four concubines' sons. The word translated as to often means with. Here it has the meaning of subordinate to. Okay, Bilhah and Zilpah. The order of the wives is here reversed because Joseph would have been closer to Bilhah, his late mother's maid. The concubines, until now referred to as maidservants, when mentioned together with Rachel and Leah, are here called wives. This may indicate a new status acquired after their mistresses had died, as Ramban Nachmanides suggests. Okay, we don't know about Leah dying yet. So I don't think, yeah, we know about Rachel, but not about Leah. So it doesn't say anything here about different work assigned to different children or different women based on their status vis-a-vis their relationship with Jacob. We don't know. We can assume, but we really don't know. Okay, so, and then also they are above the line, bad reports of them. The content of the reports is not given. This is the first of several causes of simmering enmity between Joseph and his brothers, right? So we don't know what these bad reports are. Or what is it the brothers, while they're shepherding, are negligent. They haven't been paid. They're not paying attention to where the animals are walking, so they don't see that the animals are getting injured, or maybe not so careful with wild animals around. That could be a threat to the sheep. It's who knows what the bad report is, or they're sleeping on the job, whatever. So that we're just supposed to keep it in mind that Joseph is reporting badly about his brothers. 3. VaYisrael ahav et Yosef mikol banav ki ben zikunim hulo v'asalo ketonat pasim. Now, verse 1, he's called Jacob. Verse 3, he's called Israel. Why? We don't know. Why does the Torah go back and forth with the names? Don't know, right? Can't understand it. You would think normally in a well-edited book, the name would be consistent throughout, and if it's not consistent, there'd be some parenthetical note included in a story as to why the character would be referred to by that name in one place versus another name in another place. The fact that it just 2 sentences later just shifts from Jacob to Israel, we really don't know. We really don't know about that. So Israel loved Joseph from all his brothers, from all his sons, because he was the son of his old age. And and he made for him an ornamented tunic, is how it's translated. It could be a tunic or a garment of stripes. In modern Hebrew, a pas is a stripe, and a ketonet is some kind of garment. It could be a tunic, because we'll know in the book of Exodus, in the description of the vestments of the Kohanim, the word ketonet is used there as well. Okay, so ketonet in the Torah is used for Joseph's garment and also the garment of the Kohanim. Okay, so he was the son of his old age, and but is that true? How old was Jacob when he was married, first married Leah and Rachel? It took a while until he was allowed to marry Rachel, but still not necessarily so old. But we're not told. We're told how old Isaac was when he married Rebekah, and how old he was when the twins were born. Right. That we we saw a couple of weeks ago, Isaac was 40 when he got married and 60 when the twins were born. But we're not told how old Jacob was when he fled from his brother and when he married Leah and Rachel. So we know that he's 137 when he talks to Pharaoh, and that's in a next week's portion, or a couple weeks portion. So how much time elapses between here and when he goes down to Egypt? It's possible at that point that he's close to 100 years old, but we don't know. And is Joseph really the son in his old age? Because Benjamin was born after Joseph was. So anyway, as the son of his old age. Now, is he as old as his father was when Jacob and Esau were born to his father? Is he as old as Abraham was when Isaac was born? Because Abraham was 99 years old at that time. Is he
Master,
that age? So
I
I'm
don't have any sound.
well, I hear you, Sumner. So I don't know what. There you go. So okay. So we're on VaYeishev. We're on chapter 37 of Genesis, verse 3. So more questions here about the why he's called Israel here in verse 3 and Jacob in verse 1. Why is Joseph the son of his old age? And why is he giving him this ornamented tunic? So I'm keeping you muted, Sumner, just so that we don't have distractions here. Okay. So again, questions. So why did he love Joseph more than all of his sons? Again, we don't know. And why, despite the fact that Joseph is giving bad reports about his half brothers, is Jacob still loving him the best of all of his brothers, of all of his sons? And why is he gifting him this ornamented coat? Okay, so if we look below the line, let's look at the below the line on 227. We'll see child of his old age, and I also want to read Israel loved Joseph best. So Benjamin was in fact younger, causing Rashi to understand these words, Ben Zekunim, as a child with the mature wisdom of an older person. So it's a description of Joseph as opposed to a description of Jacob as how old he was when Joseph was born. So the Ben Zekunim is not child of his old age, but rather a child who has Zekunim characteristic, that is, a child with the mature wisdom of an older person. So that's what Rashi is saying. Or the commentary to Rashi, one of the commentaries to Rashi is called the Kli Yakar, that says, or possibly Joseph could be playful with children and mature in the company of adults. So Ben Zekunim is a combination description that even though he's a child and could be childish with other children, he's also Zekunim. He could act appropriately with older people too. Okay, so that's two different ways of explaining this Ben Zekunim. Okay, and now Israel loved Joseph best. See the consequences of favoring one child over another. Because of those few ounces of wool, the coat of many colors, Jacob gave Joseph, our people were enslaved in Egypt. Okay, so the Talmud in Tractate Shabbat says, this is what happens when you favor one child over another. It could lead to historical consequences that for the entire community, right? So because of this coat of many color, because of the favoritism, the brothers then were not did not like him, and that led them, when their opportunity presented themselves, to either to threaten to kill him, but sell him into slavery, and then they followed. The entire family followed into Egypt, and that led the entire people of Israel to be enslaved, just over this favoritism with the coat of many colors. So the comment goes on, one would expect Jacob, of all people, having suffered the consequences of parental favoritism, to avoid repeating his parents' mistake. Perhaps it's easier for us to see a problem intellectually than to free ourselves of the tendency to imitate our parents. Right? So this has been, there's a lot of psychological research that's been done on children of parents who have addiction, parents of children who are abusive, that and what the impact is on the children. That is, what is the impact of the behavior of the parents on the children, and whether children are able to rise up or free themselves from the terrible way that they were raised. So there's been research done about that. This is less of an issue, favoritism versus addiction and abuse, but still, it is a question as to what happens, what's the impact that has on the effect on the kind of human being that parents are creating by having that kind of behavior. Barbara, do you have a question?
Like father, like son.
Right. It could be as simple as that. It could be as simple as that. But you would but it leads to a bigger question. That is, this is the Torah. So on the one hand, the rabbis would want to see the people in the Torah to be better than the average person. And we've seen before how the rabbis whitewash the people in the behavior of the people in the Torah, so that it would always be understood that they are acting above and beyond, that they are the best. When we see in the story itself that they're clearly not acting the best way, so that there's that dilemma that we read, that we've been reading for the past several weeks and will continue to read in the weeks ahead, about how the characters appear in the Torah, in the text itself, versus how the rabbis are interpreting the text of the Torah. So we as modern readers allow ourselves to interpret that dilemma, whereas traditional readers who have the Midrash in front of them are bound by reading it through the lens of the Midrash. Okay, so in other words, for Orthodox Jews, and especially ultra-Orthodox Jews, how the Midrash reads the Torah is how we are supposed to read the Torah. And that we're not supposed to allow ourselves to think any differently or interpret any differently other than what the rabbis, and especially Rashi, understand from the text. Okay, so because we as conservative Jews are not bound by that, by those parameters, and that we allow ourselves to be informed by biblical scholarship, we allow ourselves to be informed by a literary analysis of the text, then that allows us to have different kinds of insight. And so that is why we can ask these questions, these psychological questions about Jacob, about his children, and that psychological complexity that he might most likely had because of being brought up by Isaac and Rebekah, being favored by Rebekah and not ignored, but not favored by his father, and now what he does to his own children. Okay, so verse 4, Vayir'u echav ki oto ahav avihem mikol echav vayisneu oto velo yachlu dabro l'shalom. And his brothers saw that their father loved him from all of the brothers, and they hated him, and they could not speak well of him. Okay, so now Joseph, he spoke ill of some of his brothers, and they could not speak well of him. Okay, so the speaking that is happening here, that the Torah tells us, is not good speech. There is no peaceful speaking in these first 4 sentences. There is no love except for the love of Jacob of Joseph, which causes hatred from the other brothers. Okay, so the speaking is ill, the love is bad, and so we have in this very cryptic introduction a sense that things are not going well in Jacob's household. He has brothers who hate themselves, who hate who hate Joseph, and Jacob himself is partly to blame by showing obvious favoritism of one of his sons over the others. Okay, so that's how this story begins, right? That it starts, Jacob was settled, and then immediately we come across on things that are unsettling. We have Joseph reporting ill about his brothers. We have Jacob favoring Joseph, and because of that, the other brothers hating Joseph. So the settlement becomes quickly unsettled. Verse 5, and now the unsettlement continues. Vayachalom Yosef chalom, vayaged le'achav, v'yosifu od sno oto. Joseph dreamt a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they continued or added to hating him. The telling of the dream made the brothers hate him even more. Okay? And what was it? What was this dream? Verse 6, Vayomer alehem, he said to them, Shim'una hachalom hazeh asher chalamti. Listen, please, to this dream that I dreamt. Vehine, and here, anachnu me'almim alumim betoch hasadeh, we were binding sheaves in the field. Vehine kama alumati, and behold, and now my sheaf rose up. V'gam nitzava, so it rose up and remained standing. Vehine tesubena alumotechem, and here your sheaves are reclining. Ben yoshvinu vein mesubin, halayla hazeh kulanu mesubin. Right, it's one of the 4 questions from the Haggadah. So reclining. So my sheaf was standing, but your sheaves were lying down, were reclining. And not only that, vatishtachavena la'alumati. and they were bowing down to my sheaf. So they were lying down and maybe not bowing, but being worshiping and lying prostrate, okay, in that kind of way. All right, so pretty clear. You don't have to be Freud to understand the impact of that dream. Everybody's bowing down to Joseph, okay, and Joseph. So if a different kind of brother who would have a different kind of relationship with his brothers would keep that dream to himself. But the fact that he's already reporting ill about his brothers to his father, Joseph is the type of person that doesn't like to keep things inside or doesn't like to hide anything. He tells it like it is, whether it's good or bad, and whether it's going to do him any good or bad. That's the kind of person Joseph is so far. Okay, we'll see later if Joseph learns anything from all of this. But right now, because he's 17 years old, this is the way he treats his brothers. This is the way his brothers are treating him. There's no love lost between them all. He tells it like it is. And doesn't think, why now is it going to be any different than it was before? Okay, we can imagine that this is something typical that Joseph does. But now that the Torah is mentioning it, we know this time's a little bit different. Maybe this is the straw that breaks the camel's back. Verse 8. Vayomru lo echav hamaloch timloch aleinu imashol timshol banu v'yosifu od sno oto al cholomotav ve'al devarav. So they say to him, so they just heard this dream. Sheaves are bowing down to his sheaf. They say to him, his brothers say to him, are you going to rule over us? Are you going to rule over us? The mashol and the maloch are essentially the same words. Are you going to be king over us? Are you going to rule over us? And they continue. They added to hating him for his dreams and for his words. Okay, so the hatred just keeps building up until it's about to explode. Verse 9, so Joseph has not learned his lesson. Vayachalom od chalom acher, vayesaper oto le'achav. He dreamed another dream, and he told it to his brothers. Vayomer, and he said, Hine chalamti chalom od. Here, I've dreamt another dream. Vehine hashemesh, vahayareach, va'achadasar kochavim, mishtachavim li. So now it's not sheaves, and it's not sheaves bowing down to a sheaf, but rather there's the sun and the moon and 11 stars bowing down to me. So I'm not a moon, I'm not a sun, I'm not a star. I'm me in this dream, and there's the sun and the moon and 11 stars. Vayasaper el aviv el achav, and he told it to his father and his brothers. And so he's telling this dream to his father. The first dream was only to his brothers. Vayigar bo aviv, and so his father berated him, as it's translated here. Vayomer lo, ma hachalom hazeh asher chalamta? Havo navo ani v'imcha v'achecha lehishtachavot lecha arza? So his father berated him, and he said to him, what is this dream that you dreamt? Are me and your mother and your brothers coming to bow down to you? Right, bow down to the ground to you? So that's all that Jacob says about this. What kind of dream is this that you think that everybody, me, your mother, your dead mother, and your brothers are supposed to be bowing down to you? 11, Vayekanu vo echav. His brothers were wrought up with him. That's not exactly what the Hebrew means. His brothers were jealous of him. His brothers were envious of him. Or, even more so, were zealous about him. They were riled up to be zealots. And so, Vayikanu vo echav ve'aviv, his brothers and his brothers were jealous of him, envious of him, wrought up over him. Ve'aviv shamar et hadavar. But his father minded the matter, like kept it in mind. He marked it down, not to be forgotten. So, I want to read. I just want to be able to read 4 more sentences. Okay, and then, well, I'll say a few words more. Vayelchu echav lirot et son avihem bishchem. So we have this first incident about the dreams. Now we're on to a new subject matter. His brothers went to shepherd the flocks, their father's flocks in Shechem. Vayomer Yisrael el Yosef. So he's still Yisrael here. Verse 3, verse
Computer
1.
audio connected.
Here's verse 1, he was Jacob. Verse 3, he's Israel. And now verse 13, he's Israel. Vayomer Yisrael el Yosef. Israel says to Joseph, Halo achecha roim bishchem. Aren't your brothers shepherding in Shechem? Lecha ve'eshlachecha aleihem vayomer lo hineni. I want to send you to them. And he said to him, Joseph said to him, hineni, here I am. Or in this context, I'm ready to go. Yes, sir. At your service. That's kind of the impact of the word hineni. I want to send you to your brothers in Shechem. Vayomer lo, lech na re'ei et shalom achicha ve'et shalom achecha ve'et shalom hatzon v'hashiveni davar v'yishlachehu me'emek Chevron v'yavo Shechema. And he said to him, go, please go, and see if your brothers are okay, and if the flocks are okay, and come back and send word back, and send word back to me that everybody's fine. And he sent him from the valley of Chevron, and he came to Shechem. So Chevron to Shechem, you can drive it in half a day. You can drive it in, if there's no traffic, you can drive it in about an hour and a half. Okay, but in ancient times, it would be a day, more than a day's travel from Chevron to Shechem, a couple days travel. Okay, so vayimtsaehu ish, a man found him, vehine to'eh ba sadeh, and he was wandering in the field. Vayish alehu ha'ish lemor ma tevakesh, and the man asked him, saying, what are you looking for? Vayomer et achai anochi mevakesh, hagida nali efo hem roim. And he said to him, Joseph said to him, I'm looking for my brothers. Tell me, please, where they're shepherding. Okay, so not my brothers, here are their names. Not like Jacob says, I'm looking for Rachel and I'm looking for Laban. Is Laban around here? Or, right? So we have people looking for people before in the Torah, and they're saying specifically who they're looking for. Joseph is saying, I'm looking for my brothers, assuming that this man knows who he's talking about. Perhaps his 11 brothers are a unit, and everybody knows them throughout the land as the 11 brothers. But he's cryptic about who he's looking for, and who is this man also, that is this anonymous man. And then verse 17, and that's the end of what I wanted to do today. Vayomer ha'ish nas'u mizeh ki shamati omrim ne'elcha dotaina. Vayelech Yosef achar echa vayimtzaim bedotan. And the man said, they traveled from here because I heard them saying, let's go to Dotan. So Joseph went after his brothers, and he found them in Dotan. Now, the commentary below says this anonymous man is the important person in this portion, because if Joseph doesn't find his brothers, then Joseph wouldn't have been sold into slavery, and the family wouldn't have ended up in Egypt. So because of this anonymous man, the whole story of Jewish history would be different. So all of Jewish history turns on this anonymous man. Okay, so there's that one element to the story. So the story isn't just a story of Joseph and his brothers. It's not a literary unit that, a story that Charles Dickens would write, week after week in the newspaper, right? It's not just a work of fiction. It is the story of the Jewish people. So the fact that this anonymous man takes on a central role then questions, why is he anonymous? Shouldn't this person be named so that we understand how important this is? Or maybe he's not named because, as the commentary below the line suggests, any little thing can cause a great domino effect. And we don't know. We can't even, we might be able to trace it back after all the dominoes have fallen, back to the original thing that prompted everything to happen. But sometimes we can't. Sometimes we can't. And so when,
Yeah.
so when we can't, then it's anonymous. We don't know. But so here, one thing about the story, the anonymity. The other thing about the story is the cryptic nature of the story. And a third thing is the psychological insight that's clearly here as part of the story, the way Jacob was brought up himself and what he does to his sons, and the hatred that is engendered by Joseph of his brothers, and the jealousy and the passion, the negative passion that is created here, and which leads then to us asking, as we do almost every week, why is the Torah telling us a story about the history of our people in this way? If we're reading the mythic origin of our people, wouldn't it be better, if the story is being written, and we assume that God has not written the Torah, if we assume that God hasn't written the Torah, we assume that people wrote the Torah, why are people writing a story in which the ancestors look so bad? Now, if the story is written in the time of the kings of Israel, well, even though there is one Israel, they're not exactly united. All the tribes don't get along very well with each other, and there's a lot of civil war going on, a lot of battles, a lot of strife within the nation of Israel at that time. And perhaps then the story is written in this way to kind of explain where all that enmity came from. The brothers never got along, which explains why we, the people of Israel, don't get along now in the time of King David or the time of King Solomon or whenever this was written, right? And is there a way in which the brothers will get along? Well, we'll see that in a couple of weeks, how the brothers reunite and Joseph is moved to tears by his brothers. So that possibly gives hope that the people of Israel can be reunited, and certainly the Haftarah chosen for that when Judah and Joseph reunite is the Haftarah from the prophet Ezekiel, in which God tells Ezekiel to take two sticks, write on one Ephraim, that represents Joseph, Joseph's son Ephraim, represents the northern kingdom, write on the other one Judah, put them together, stick them together, and voila, they become one stick. So the idea from the prophet Ezekiel is that the people will be reunited and will grow again together someday as a united people. So the story, we shouldn't ask necessarily, well, we shouldn't be surprised that the story is written this way. The one way to understand the story being written this way is what I just explained, to kind of after the fact of the people of Israel being at odds with each other, a story is written to kind of explain that. Okay, so any further thoughts or comments about this? Okay, so I hope everybody has a good rest of the day. Wish everybody a happy Hanukkah starting tomorrow night, and take care, everybody, and we continue to pray for peace in Israel. Take care.